religion was a way for people to gather. Religion, organized religion, was a way for people to come together and practice a spiritual practice, especially one that is culturally acceptable. I think there's something that potentially could have been lost when people are now starting to question religion as as an organized structure. Yes, that's great. And I feel like potentially there's something to fill there, right? So when we speak of community, it's kind of people gathering, lots of people with the same or similar ideology. And I feel like people are starving for that right now. Welcome to Permission the Podcast. I'm Dr. T, and this is my sister
Silvana, and we are two regular people talking about spirituality in our daily lives.
Each week, we're inviting you to the internal conversation. So let's get started.
With your permission. Welcome back to Permission the Podcast. Happy Tuesday. Really excited to introduce this episode, the Spiritual Sisterhood.
Woo! Okay, so how we got started with this episode, just briefly before we introduce our amazing guests, one of which you already know. We started this kind of idea generating of, okay, if we collaborate and if it's going to be a series, what do we want the series to be about? I think this was the first kind of idea that we had for Spiritual Sisterhood, was this episode that we're making today. And I think part of what went behind the idea of this episode was, how are women coming together to support each other, and how are women coming together to support each other in a spiritual way, with heart and soul. And this is part of the reason why Anne and I connected so strongly as well. Well, we can get into that. But let's first introduce Anne and Kristy. Anne, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I am a psychologist. I work in New Jersey, New York, and across 42 state borders at this point, thanks to SkyPact. I work with adults, and I am doing nowadays a lot of ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. That's it. Oh, and I'm a mom, and I'm a sister, and all of those other great things. And I'm introducing my spiritual sister, Kristy, to join us today.
Yes, good morning. I'm Kristy. I am a trauma-informed professional. I work as a hospital chaplain, a crisis response chaplain. I also have a private practice as a spiritual director and counselor. And I also do integration work with clients, integrating what happens in their lives while they are on a spiritual path, which is life, and integrating learnings that they have through their own daily practices, through being on retreat, through being with people like myself, delving deeper into their relationship with spirit. And I also work with sacred medicines, and delighted to be with you today.
Amazing. Welcome.
Wow, welcome.
So, what is the story behind you all meeting? just briefly.
Kristy, you want to tell the story?
Sure, I can tell the story. I met Anne in September of 2025. We actually met on a retreat. I was finishing one retreat and was doing a second. When I met Anne, she was joining for the second retreat that I was being a part of. And I was very, very exhausted and also very, very nourished. I was doing a lot of deep trauma resolution and healing, as well as spiritual expansion. So it was an incredible, incredible week. And I met Anne when she arrived at the retreat location. I was actually resting on one of the mattresses that was there for us, and they had a blanket over my head because that's how I like to sleep. With a blanket over my head. And I'm a small person, and she didn't see me there. And so as they were arriving into the space, someone came over and said, "Oh my God, there's someone laying here." um, and so I brought the blanket off my head and I said, "Hello." And I didn't
That's
know
cool.
anybody at the retreat who was arriving. So, and I knew that I looked like a wild woman, which was okay. It just was. So we met in a very fun
Mhm.
and interesting way and very vulnerable way, actually.
Mhm. Yeah, I did not see her. She was, I thought she was just a blanket. So I was definitely surprised when she popped up. And there's more to the getting to know you story, which we can tell you. But the second day of the retreat, somebody said something about Aquarius moon or something that was going on with
Oh,
Aquarius.
the
And I said,
evening
"Oh,
of
I'm
the
an
retreat.
Aquarius."
Right.
Yes. And she said, "I'm an Aquarius too. What's your birthday?" And I said, "February 1st." And hers was the exact same. I don't know that I've ever met, I
Oh my
know maybe
God.
two people in my life. So it was like spirit brought us together. It was
That's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I've not met someone that has my same birthday, actually.
What is yours?
May 10th.
Well, now
So
you're
that's
about to.
that's interesting.
Maybe we should put it out there. Anybody with that birthday, please
Mhm.
leave us a message.
Your,
Right?
we
spi-
need
your,
to
your
we need to
spiritual
connect that.
sister. It's a yin yang. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So that's so kind of funny because I don't even know if we even talked about how me and you met, Anne,
I'm not
in
sure.
our
Yeah.
last episode, even though it would have been probably more relevant in the last episode, but here we are. So uh, I met Anne at her apartment, actually, her part-time apartment in the Upper East Side, and someone was holding space for us to do ketamine clinically,
Hmm.
and that was a really good kind of interesting experience. As it was the second time I was doing ketamine clinically. Well, it was the second time I was doing ketamine, period, and it was the second time I was doing it in a clinical setting. The first time was with a one-on-one, so it was me and a practitioner, and this time it was the time that I met Anne was the same practitioner with a group setting. So it was Anne and two other women and myself, right? Or am I
Hmm.
getting that
Yeah.
right?
And it
Yeah,
was
yeah, two
we
other women.
we're all therapists. So it was um one therapist holding space for yeah, group work with sitting with ketamine. Hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure how, like, what made us kind of continue connecting. I feel like we were trying to have a group chat, and the group chat was just dying, and no one was responding. and and it was just not happening until like you and I, and we
Mhm.
just kind of got together and
Yeah.
went for a walk in Central Park, and that's kind of what sparked that.
Well, as Kristy and I often talk about, that that's what you call spirit bringing you together, right? It's sort of, and the same way that it brought me to you, it brought me to Silvana through you, right? Like, I don't think any of these things are accidents. I think that it's sort of, it wasn't just that. I mean, I couldn't say either why we continued to reach out or, went and had these bigger conversations when the rest of the group sort of fell apart. But I think it just happens as it should.
Yeah, I think the people that are meant to stay, stay, and the people that are just, meant to drop, they drop because they're not part of the, the happening.
Not of the same place in the journey, not of the same
Yeah,
vibration, right? There's something that just has people connect.
right. And I'm probably not meant to be doing anything else with you, So, or maybe the group was formed and that's how you stayed connected to Teddy, and then eventually that dropped. But if it wasn't for that group, maybe you wouldn't have had that walk in the park. So things have a purpose, everything.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, so have you, for this is a question for everyone now, have you all been seeing a lot more kind of women coming together supporting each other? Because I feel like I have.
Absolutely. Well, you ladies know I have a circle. I have a women's circle, and that's been growing. Women bring women, and even in our last circle that you guys came to.
Hmm.
I brought a surprise woman.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that now.
Yeah, we're getting into that now.
Okay, so I have my circle, and now I'm into 2 sessions a month. One session is our normal circle, which has a theme. Our next circle, we're going to work on our inner child healing. And so they have a theme. We work with crystals, rituals. We gather together, we meditate, move energy through dance or exercise, and we share, hold each other, accompany each other. So, and then I'm having an extra circle. The other circle of the month is more of like express your creativity, artistic, and flow that way. So I did connect to your Egyptian inner goddess session, which was a 3-hour basically artwork. And there was a meditation at the beginning. All the women show up there. It shows up with my mom, who's very Roman Catholic and nothing else, right? So then I'm like,
But she's our
oh,
mother.
yeah, she's
Well,
her
she's
mom.
my mother.
And
You have to explain that you both say my mother when you mean
so
our
my
mother.
mom sitting next to me, now we're in the circle, and I'm like, now I have to guide the women to connect to the energy, open their hearts, connect to the energy. I'm having them hold their hearts. I'm doing all these things, and I can feel my mother's energy just like, no. Very on like a block. And so I had to do a couple of things, which I had to take the meditation in another direction, still give the women what they came to get, but also, on the other hand, keep my mom calm. So
You were juggling. Yeah.
I was sending her love. I was covering with white light, and I was telling all us. I was like, and I just wanted her to be basically quiet until we were done with the meditation, instead of just like, I don't know what you're doing. What is this?
I was like ready. I was almost expecting her to freak out. But so I didn't really think that this was gonna be a bad idea.
And which brings me to the other thing. How did you not think that was a bad idea?
I don't know. Well, I thought, okay, we're gonna be like, it's a women's group. We're gonna be spending time together. We're gonna be doing drawings, like whatever, like.
You forgot the meditation part. Anyway, we're done. I'm sending her love. I can sense her energy of blockish. So I could feel all the love around the women and over here on my left side.
It's like, fuck that noise.
And so I'm sending her love. And as we're done with the meditation, she goes like, are you praying to the dead? And so
She got so mad that she was so confused. She was so confused.
And I'm like, Mom, we are connecting to an energy. I was just like, this is meditation. Is it like a prayer? Well, I'm like, to me it is, but there was no way I was going that whole with her. Like, yeah, no. I'm like, this is, it's for you to quiet your mind, connect to your love, your creativity, and this energy, and blah, blah, blah. She goes on and telling a story about somebody taking a bracelet of a princess in Egypt, and the princess showing up in their sleep or whatever, telling, give me back my bracelet. I'm like,
In Spanish, by the way.
Yeah,
I missed all of that.
I have no idea why that was
because
the thing
she
that
thought
she went to.
We were disturbing
the
dead, basically. So she went on telling that story, and I'm like, Mom, no, this is different. It's like mythology. So now then I went to, it's like Viracocha and, Pachamama and, the Inca stuff. And so she understands. And then she's like, okay, well, I don't believe in this. That was that.
Right. But we didn't go into how she doesn't believe in it because the Spaniards wiped out the Incas, but we're not going to talk about that.
No, I was going to go. And then I was thinking, well, it's like saints. You pray to saints, they're dead people. Right. And so there was no way I was going there. I was just like, okay, how do we keep this? How do we move forward? And so it made me bend and shift and reroute in order to save the space, right? To save the other women's experience. And then Anne at the end, are you going to read cards? Which I originally intended to put out my Egyptian cards so everyone can take one at the end. After I saw my mom, there's no way I'm doing this because then I'm going to be a fortune teller and
a witch.
Which she already knows I am. But anyway.
Well, I do think somebody said, was that a mistake? Or, why did you bring her? But I think, and Kristy can speak to this more, that happened for a reason. And, we often say we're only as well as our sickest child, right? But I think of it in terms of all living organisms, all people in our, certainly in our families, our loved ones, but we can't move forward without bringing everyone. In some ways, that was difficult, I'm sure, for you and for her, but it's about creating a space where she can be part of that.
I think Well, the way I feel, it's also like the circle is for women that are open about it, are willing to open and receive the information. So I'm glad she knows what I do and she experienced, a little version of it. But part of me is just like, it really isn't for her. M- Mainly too, because Dada brought her without telling her what it was, right? She's like, "Oh, you're coming with me." So she comes. So this is also a shock for her. Like, "Oh, what are we doing here? What's going on?"
Yeah, I hijacked her.
So, so
I
it,
just like
in
stole
in
her.
a way, in a way, the integrity of the circle was like big compromise, like so.
Mm.
I feel like, am I glad that she knows? Yeah, sure. Would I have brought her, or do I think that was a good idea? It, I don't think it was, because I'm like, although it took me a long time to explain to my mom why I meditate, or why I'm doing this and why I'm doing that, like conversations of a long, long time.
Mm.
She still is not open to the information, right? So she doesn't get it. She's like, just pray to God. And I'm like, yeah, God
Mm.
is everything. I am God.
You can't say that.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Mm.
What do you think, Kristy, in hearing that?
It's very challenging. Yeah, it's very challenging. Um, I know just from my childhood religion. I also know from my professional experience of meeting people where they are in their own spirituality. That is my job in many different roles that I have. That it is a balance, it's a dance of being respectful and meeting someone where they are, which doesn't mean you're in agreement with where they are, but especially
Correct.
when it's my position, to be educated, to be knowledgeable, to be able to accompany people into their theology, into their perspective of life, and hold that space for them. It would be very challenging to navigate that with your mom in that environment. Very, very well
Mm-hmm.
versed in Catholicism and Christianity, and I understand the hurdles around that. And there's so many ironies, right? Because your mom doesn't realize the the origins of Catholicism, right? And
Mm-hmm.
where it came from and how it's been manipulated and misconstrued and weaponized, really, right? In order to control others. So she's only experiencing that from like her understanding of God, of who God is, who God is not, how to access God, how to not access God. And that's very challenging. So, yeah, I feel for you really deeply there because you are holding a space. You're creating a space and you're holding the space. And then you're also holding your mom while you're holding that space. So that I just know energetically it was profoundly challenging. And
Yeah.
just a lot of love. What you're trying to do is meet her in her fear, because really that's what it is. It's fear that comes
Yeah.
up within her.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then that can turn to confusion, to anger, to frustration, to how whatever form it then takes. But, very beautiful to hear you attending to her interior energetically by sending her love, because really that's what you're doing, holding the whole space in that love.
Mm-hmm.
And then specifically taking your mom's heart that you could so feel was just very closed and inward, because she's thinking
Mm-hmm.
that she's to protect herself from this energy from everybody in the room. Um, and probably feeling like she needed to save y'all, right? Just like from her theology point of view of what was going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so much, it's just so much. And to speak to what Anne said, you know, we open up to the possibility that my language would be it was for everybody's arising in that room. Like that situation was for your arising, it was for your sisters, it was for Anne, it was for every woman present. And even though it was challenging, what did it offer each person in that room? Because it offered every single woman something, right? A choice. I think that is one of the biggest learnings in life is we actually have a choice every second of every day. I personally think that's what free will is, right? how do we respond to life? How do we respond that's happening to us in a way that is the most whole version of ourselves, the most open version of ourselves, the highest version of ourselves? How can we take that experience, that moment, be present to it, and know that it is for our expansion, it is for our good? Because I know, sure as nothing did not feel like that to you in that moment. I'm sure you felt a lot of things, but not, yay,
Oh.
this is happening. So uh, yeah, so it was
I
definitely for
yeah.
your arising,
It
right? Yes,
it
especially in
was
terms of
because
holding
it
the
just
space.
made
Yeah,
it made me also like be into spaces at the same time.
sure.
I'm
Yeah.
like I was like trying to neutralize her energy, but also calm her down, send her love. So I was
Yeah.
embracing her with light. Meanwhile, I'm talking something else, and I'm connecting also my heart with the women. So
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, wow. So I can do
Mm-hmm.
this is something new. So I can do this. I can
Right.
be
Yes.
almost like two versions of myself in one space.
You learn how to
I don't
hold the
know if that
group in
makes
that way.
sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. No,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're speaking of. Yeah, that's the thing is when you
Hmm.
hold a group, it's such a very sacred and immense position. It's immense role to be in
Yeah.
because you are holding that space, not just figuratively, but like energetically as well. And so the bigger the space, the more different
Hmm.
energies that are coming in that are meeting. And obviously, in that moment, you're utilizing so many different skill sets within you, maybe some you didn't even realize are there. But it was
I know.
completely for your expansion, not only as holding the space as a group leader, but as a woman, as a daughter, as a biological sister, as a spiritual sister, right? You're realizing how your gifts can even be more amplified in a very challenging situation. And ultimately, how do I be present right now to what's happening? Not go
Hmm.
outside of this space, not like go into the future, go into the past,
Right.
future or the past, or like be like so mad at your sister. I cannot
Right.
believe she did this. I can't believe she brought mom. Are you serious? Right?
I wasn't mad. I was just like, sometimes, was she thinking? Or,
Yeah,
like,
whatever. Yeah, whatever arises. But it gives you the opportunity to just be fully present to that
yeah.
now, which had
Yeah.
so many
For
elements
sure.
in it that were for your arising, because that's
Hmm.
where that happens in the most challenging moments of our lives. That's when we have these very
Right.
profound
And also
teachings.
keep the integrity, meaning like every woman there can be heard, can be
Sure,
even if they don't
absolutely.
agree. Like if you don't agree with
Absolutely.
something, you can speak, you can say it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We can
Because
talk
that may
about it.
happen to you again, right? You might have a friend who brings a friend who doesn't have a very good understanding of what's happening in the
Hmm.
circle, and they might respond very similarly to your mom.
Right.
And so it's like a gift of the universe to give you that situation when it was with your mom, someone you know somewhere so well,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to when it will happen with a stranger, right? Where they'll have a surprise and what is the flow of the room is or what the
Right.
expectation is. And so you, as the group leader, gave you that experience to practice that, right, in a way that is very aware and awakened and staying in that flow of love, which sounds like exactly what you're opening yourself up to. Beautiful.
Thank you, Kristy. See, I did it all for you. See?
See?
You're welcome. I stretched you, baby. I expanded you.
Listen,
That is
that's
true.
all. But look at her ego.
Well, it was spirit using tea. Don't forget, spirit using tea.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You're a conduit, T. You're a conduit.
You're a conduit. Exactly right. Yeah.
Good work.
Uh, other examples of like, have you guys been into like women specific retreats or like
Mm-hmm.
Silvana was talking about women's circles or anything like that
Mm-hmm.
from prior experiences?
Yeah, many. I just went on a women's art retreat in Kauai in January. That was wonderful, beautiful, spiritual, creative. Um, I probably talked about it before. It was sea turtle energy, Um, you know, the sea turtles came up every evening and they were there every morning when I woke up. It was absolutely magical. But, there's I don't know, there's something about healing in a collective, and
Mhm.
we do definitely in our culture, make these different groups, right? We sort of label them like women's groups. And and there's something to that, right? But I think there's also just a lot of healing the feminine energy in men or other people as well. Um, so in general, I'm all for healing collectively and sharing in that in groups. I think it's very healing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
How
really
about you?
interesting history of women gathering in the United States that goes back hundreds of years. I wish I could think of the exact time period and I can't. However, it's fascinating because women would gather. They would gather together midweek ish in their communities, in the towns, and they would talk and they would teach each other things and they would show each other tricks of the trade or whatever may be because they didn't have these forms of communication. They obviously could not pick up a phone, they couldn't send an email or a text. And what's so interesting is that after a certain amount of time had passed, their husbands and the men of their towns and villages became quite angry, frustrated, very disturbed. These women gathered because the women were empowered. These women, because of their ability to gather together and communicate with one another, hold space for one another, bear witness to one another's lives, this, of course, resulted in them feeling more empowered, them having more resources, them having more knowledge, more wisdom passed down to them than they wouldn't have had. So there actually was a banning of women gathering. And that
At one
that in
point,
and
yeah.
of itself, yes, there wasn't a complete ban on that where women were no longer. I think what happened was a law was passed where you had to have permission to be out past a certain time. And of course, if you were married, then that permission had to come from your husband. And so they just wouldn't give their wives permission. And so then these women just could not gather anymore. And then you have another like complete disempowerment. So I think just innately there is so much power that exists in women just simply gathering and lovingly holding space for one another. There doesn't even have to be like an agenda or an active, this is the theme or whatever it may be. But just when you get women in a space that is safe, that they can feel heard, seen, supported, witnessed, it's just natural
It's a
magic.
force of nature. Yeah. This is powerful. It's
Very.
funny. Well, it's not funny. The first circle meet I had, we basically focused on that, which
Mhm.
was how long women have been gathering, what were they teaching each other, how the information was passed down, there were medicine women, how all of this
Mhm.
knowledge.
Mhm.
And and now we're in a society where we were taught to compete one another. Oh, she's prettier. I don't want her around. Like a a a way of separate, really.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we're not competing. We're supporting each other. You elevate, and that elevates the whole group. Everybody. And so it's great. It's great that I think that's where it's heading. We're going back. We're remembering. And the women in the group, they're like, oh my gosh, like this space, it grounds me, it does this. So all of these things. And they support each other. I mean, like we're connected. We're like, we're all different. You know what I mean? We're all different. We're all at a different place in our journey. Yeah, we're all connected and we're all together, supporting one another in that journey. And it's amazing.
So, Silvana, when you're talking about women gathering and being at different points of the journey, because it's not about everybody being at the same place, which is absolutely true, it reminded me of about 14 years ago. I had left an abusive relationship, and I joined a support group that was at one of the local women's shelters. It was a very, very helpful organization to me called Turning Point in southeastern Pennsylvania. And what was amazing about that group was exactly what you said. Was when I first joined the group, I was really, really just a shell of myself in every respect, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. Had almost lost my life in this relationship. It took a great toll on me. And so when I first started sitting in these weekly circles, the women in the circles were all essentially flames of hope for me, because there was a woman who'd been there maybe 2 weeks longer than me, and then a month, and then 2 months, and then 6 months, and then a year. And it was living flames of hope sitting in the circle for me, that, okay, maybe I'll be there in that amount of time. Maybe I'll feel stronger. I'll feel more confident. I'll feel whatever it may be. And then as time progressed, then all of a sudden I was the person who'd been sitting there a month. And then I'd been sitting there for 2 months. And so then the women who came in behind me, then I could be that for them, and the people who'd been there before me. And then, it just keeps going. And that was probably the at that point up into my life, the most significant circle, definitely, of women that I had ever participated in, and I had never had that experience of feeling so hopeful and seen and empowered and not judged,
Right,
was
and
sitting in
held
that
and
circle.
and also
Absolutely,
that you don't have to
absolutely.
do it alone. Like you're going through
Exactly.
whatever that you're going through. We went through
Yes.
stuff as well. You're not alone. You don't
Yeah.
have to do it by yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not othered,
Hmm.
because especially when you come out of relationships like that, I know for myself and many others, but I'll speak for myself, I just felt very embarrassed. I had a lot of shame. I didn't want anybody to know, especially because it wasn't the first abusive relationship I'd been in. So lots of feeling othered, lots of feeling behind, feeling like something was just wrong with me. And not having to feel that way when I sat in that circle, feeling as though I wasn't actually othered, that there were these other people who spoke this language that only people who'd had those experiences understood, and that it didn't define me. I think that's just such a big element in life with any type of trauma, big T
Hmm.
trauma that happens to anybody in any way,
Right.
that, I think one of the most painful and horrendous side effects of experience of trauma that feel is the isolation you feel. You feel as you're
Right.
going to be judged for it, as you're no longer
Like,
as functional or as good as other people or women in
also if it's your
society.
fault that
Yes.
like it's my
Oh,
fault. I put myself. I did this, and so
yes.
at the end,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
come into a space where you can forgive and not
Yeah.
outside of you, but you start with you
Mhm.
forgiving yourself and
Yes.
allowing that energy to cleanse you, and also eventually forgiving, you know, the person that put you there and
Absolutely.
all of
Yeah.
that, because for that
Yeah.
reason you're in the space you're in, growing, expanding, right?
Yeah, exactly. I
Hmm.
actually think that's what those other women can did offer me, and what women in general can offer each other, is this level of acceptance, of self acceptance. And just this past year, I reread Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. And he just writes the most incredible in that book. He says, you actually don't need to love yourself. None of us need to love ourselves. He said, because we are love. We came from love. It's a state of being, is love. What we need to do is accept ourselves. Because when we accept ourselves, then we realize that we're loved, right? And then he says, if you need to, along the way to acceptance, love yourself, He said, do it. Do all the practices that are part of, quote, self love. But eventually we're transcending self love, which 100% that is so true. It is acceptance of who we are and our life experience, which can be so, so challenging. And so I agree with you. When we sit in those circles of women, we feel as though we can accept ourselves. We can. And the love that emanates from them is a mirror to us of what we are as well, which is of love. Love.
Love. Yeah. I'm going to tell my mom that's my new religion. Love.
Yeah,
She's gonna be,
absolutely. I mean, it's the essence of all religion,
Yes.
right? But
yeah.
Gonna freak out. So this is interesting because I just recently came across something on one of my podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't know which one, so don't ask. That said that when women come together, they provide a space for women to heal. When men come together, it benefits them to have women around in order to heal. And when women are in these groups with men, they don't heal as well as they would if it was just with women. So that was an interesting piece of, men only with men can only get themselves so far. So did this research say, this particular person that researched it. But it was very interesting to me because there was this thing about like um when women come together we can actually heal more. But also men need us as well. What do you guys think about that?
I think that men more than anyone needs circles and places where they can reconnect really to their feminine energy. And as I'm embracing my circle and making it grow and expanding with it, I'm starting to think about, well, can I hold space for men? I have men that are learning meditation with me. And then I'm like, can I make a circle for men led by a woman? But I think it would be amazing if men can lead men, women, but also combined, meaning, so my vision of the future for my circle is to do pop-ups or everywhere, but also to have gather with men and women. So men separate with their circle, women with their circle, and then we integrate and we do activities together. Because you need a balance, right? And so I'm thinking maybe I could hold space for men where they could open up and connect, but I don't know. I gotta orchestrate, let all the planets align like it did on the 28th in order to be able to find a group of men that can trust each other, really, because they're going to be listening to one another and supporting one another.
I think the feminine is a very particular healing energy. And I think it's very needed for men. I think actually that's where, the essence of the masculine wound comes from. That's why it oppresses the feminine, dominates the feminine, wants to control the feminine, because it recognizes its deep need for the feminine. And it doesn't know how to not have that without that control, without that domination. And I think the beauty of feminine energy is this natural inclusivity that exists within it and this openness of being. And I think that probably comes from this deep natural maternal instinct, even if you don't mother biological children. the beauty of mothering and how that maternal love isn't just for children. There's this really beautiful quality of maternal love that we actually can give one another. I think it's very healing to men. I personally think so many men are walking around with these very deep feminine wounds that they don't even know that's what it is. It could be from a mother wound, it could be from an early relationship wound that really hurt them. And because of the way that society is, especially here in the West, where, yeah, they're not talking to their friends about how deeply they were hurt by their girlfriend when they were 15, 16, 17 years old, whatever it was. And it really causes this wound that doesn't heal. And then it's very prohibitive to them to allowing people that deeply into their heart space, whether it's romantic or not. 'Cause I think
Mhm.
that's another beauty of women is it's not just romantic love that women can offer, and it's not just maternal love. It's this really beautiful feminine love that is sisterly, that is unconditional, that is very welcoming and can hold it, can hold whatever it is. So, yeah, I would believe that there is an element of femininity and the love of the feminine that men desperately need, even if they can't put their finger on why it is. Because that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of yin and yang. That's the whole point of us as men and women is to gather together and create that wholeness of being. But I do think there's a very particular essence of feminine love that has a very particular healing to it that is so needed on the planet. And most men do not associate feminine love with anything other than either their mother or a romantic or erotic love. Even like with sisters, it's rare that you find. I have a brother who I love greatly, but it's rare to find a brother and a sister sharing in that sibling love the way you would with with same gendered siblings. And I always think it's so beautiful when a sister and a brother have this very deep, strong familial love, um, because it's possible. And I just think we've unlearned that. We've especially with men. You know how Ann and I talked about this a few weeks ago. I said I've had several friendships with men, like as grown-ups, where at one point they may think that they're in love with me. I'm like, you're not in love with me. You just are receiving love from me and it's confusing to you because you don't have like a category for that, if you will. And you're thinking, if I'm feeling this from a woman, if I'm feeling so seen, so held, so respected, so cared for, this must like equal romantic feelings or erotic feelings. And it's like, no, that's just love, darling.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I love
that's
that.
yeah.
That is
It's
everything.
well put. And now that you mentioned that, I've had several friendships with men, and especially being younger, and that has been the case at times when they were like, and I'm like, no, we're friends. I love you. It's just there's different types of love. um,
Exactly. Exactly.
but yeah, it's amazing.
I also
And
think that
thoughts?
the masculine's very oh, yes, and go ahead. I was gonna say that I think the masculine has its own, healing energy property as well, and, different, but and
What she said, always. That's what I,
She's like, ditto, ditto.
ditto. Christy is like the voice that I don't have. Like she puts words to everything that I'm thinking and feeling. So that's why when I found her, it was like, oh, we I say we talk for hours. We talk, we text, we share these ideas every day since we've met, and but oftentimes it's just me listening. Like, yes, that's what. Yes, yes, yes. Um, I agree with all of this, and I also feel that we're not all that different, right? And I'm sure you all agree. In working with people um, who identify as male or female, or somewhere along that spectrum, I believe, that it's just, I try to look at people as people and not this body that they're in, right? That being said, and I've met, biological men who have much more feminine energy, are much more in touch with their feminine energy than some women who I've met, right? So I think it depends what we're talking about, but this all comes into play. And again, it's sort of where people are on their journey. So if we're sitting with a group of women, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're enveloped in feminine and maternal energy, right? And vice versa. Although culturally, it can feel very different. And I think, but in retreat work and medicine work that I've been involved in, I think that all of these things were together, and people are people, and energy is energy, and you find what you need, right? And people are just comfortable in being who they are without these categories and titles and labels and worrying about, any of the stuff that we worry about when we're in ego. So it can be really, really powerful. And so I say, be open to what comes, right? If, Silvana, as you host your groups, and I always feel this way, whoever comes into my energy field, I just try and accept where they are, who they are, and that they're there for a reason, and for in some way that, I'm just open to whatever that is, a teaching, um, a, a helping, a healing, um, bringing up something, as we usually call it, countertransference in the world of psychology, but you can think about it in all different ways. Like, what is this? What does this bring up for me? What is it bringing up for them? And what do we do with that? And I think when we go back to this practice of presence and being present, and just being with whoever and whatever is there, um, it's just so rich, It's just every day there's something new and beautiful, and yeah, Kristy will explain it better verbally, but just being in that.
Like when Teddy talks and I talk, we talk differently, right? So I always say, you use your fancy words, or psychology words. And I'm like, I just use, I don't know, street English.
Street
um,
It's
We need
interesting
all the
to
languages.
yeah, exactly. And you say fancy words to me, but like I don't necessarily know what that means when you say that. Anyway, so to community, right? So when we're talking about community more broadly, not necessarily specifically with women, it's interesting that we kind of touched on Catholicism a little bit, because religion was a way for people to gather. Religion, organized religion, was a way for people to come together and practice a spiritual practice, especially one that is culturally acceptable. I think there's something that potentially could have been lost when people are now starting to question religion as as an organized structure. Yes, that's great, and I feel like potentially there's something to fill there, right? So when we speak of community, it's kind of people gathering, lots of people with the same or similar ideology, and I feel like people are starving for that right now. Like there's a gap in our society where um yes, we're going to work and we're placing a lot more emphasis on work being meaningful, right? We want work to give us life, to give us purpose and to set our souls on fire. But what if that's not happening there? And then we place so much emphasis or um I don't know, lots of things on relationship, specifically intimate partnership, where um, I want you to be my intimate partner. I want you to be my best friend. I want you to do this, but I also want you to be my community. I also want you to do X, Y, and Z, and I also want you to be exactly like me. And I also want this, and I also want that. So I feel like the potentially the lack of community has created pressure on systems that didn't have that pressure and it's an interesting thing and I'm kind of finding myself wondering if if this can give way to other types of communities, if that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% it can. I see this not just in doing one-on-one work with people in spiritual counseling and direction or trauma resolution, but in the work of chaplaincy in the hospitals. I see this all the time. I spend most of my professional time in the hospital with strangers and get a very, really good feel for the population. And people are lonely. They're so lonely. And there's a staggering statistic that perpetual loneliness has the medical equivalency on your body, the health impact of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which
I've
is
heard
wild.
that before.
That
It's
Yeah.
is
true.
so fucking
Yeah,
bananas.
It is. It's
it
real
is.
fucking bananas.
Wow.
And so what's this really beautiful movement in chaplaincy? Because first of all, I'll just do a little chaplaincy education because I know also from my job, people are like, what the hell is that? So
Seriously.
chaplains, yeah, for real. Chaplains are not ministers. A lot of people think they are. The origins of chaplaincy certainly do include ministers and still do. I have a lot of colleagues who are also congregational ministers who then have additionally received the training of chaplaincy. But a chaplain is not a minister. A chaplain is someone who attends to your spiritual care and also your emotional care. And so that training happens after graduate training. You do need a master's in theology or divinity or religion or something of that nature because you're working with people's spirituality and religion is part of spirituality. It is not spirituality, just to be clear. And so you have to
That's
understand
right.
that and meet people in it. And so we attend to their spirituality and to their emotionality and like show up for them like how can we hold this space for you and be supportive, how can we meet you in that. And so in doing so in the hospital, obviously I'm spending a lot of time with people in the worst moments of their life, difficult diagnosis for themselves, for someone they love, someone has died unexpectedly, someone is actively dying, someone is navigating a chronic illness, whatever it may be. um, and so I have very intimate conversations with people that for me are happening all day, every day, just in my own personal life and in my professional life. And what I remember a lot professionally is people are not having these conversations like on the reg. Like, is that a usual thing that they're doing is exploring these very deep, this depth inside of themselves. And so many cases, people say, I've never said this out loud to anyone before. I haven't talked about this in years, whatever it may be. But what we're noticing, T, is exactly what you're saying in the world of chaplaincy is people need community and they don't have it. So then within chaplaincy, what's emerging is how can we as chaplains, especially chaplains like myself, who I am not a religious chaplain, I am a spiritual chaplain, but I do not have a religion that endorses me or I do not have a religion that I participate in. The earth is my religion and everything associated with that. Um, However, obviously, I have a deep connection to spirit and spirituality in general. So people need places to gather. So in chaplaincy, how that's unfolding, whether you're a religious chaplain or non-religious, is are there spaces that we can offer that feel inclusive, that feel open, that feel warm for people to connect? That has been something on my heart for a couple of years now that I've just started to explore. I was kind of like ignoring the prompt. I had some other things going on. I'm like, I don't think I want you to, I don't know if I want to do that. But I just could not, the prompt would not leave me to create these circles of love, essentially, is what they are. So people can come and gather together and drop down into their heart space, which they don't even know how to do, right? Most people, they're like, what are you even talking about? Because we spend so much time in our heads. We don't teach one another in this culture that we're actually supposed to move between our mind, the beauty of our intellect. It's not supposed to be on all the time. Our heart space, which is where our emotional brain lives in our physiological heart, right? Not to mention our energetic heart. And then our body. Our body is this own vessel of awareness and connection with others and with spirit. So, yes, T, there is this immense, immense decline in spaces for people to gather because churches are shutting down. They're just non-existent, or they
Yeah.
have 17 people that arrive on a Sunday, and so now they just financially cannot afford to gather, or whatever it may be. So two things are happening. We're having this amazing explosion, if you will, of waking up, people waking up and questioning, which is beautiful. And in addition to that, that means that people are on their own more, and they want that guidance, and they want that accompaniment, and they want to feel seen and held. And I remember when I started working in restaurants in college, this is when I started to understand why regulars exist in the world of restaurants, bars, things of that nature, because people want to be known. They want literally the Cheers theme from the 80s. Everybody knows your name. They
Yeah,
want to know your name.
yeah, yeah.
Right? They want to know that they ordered like scrambled eggs with rye toast with a side of sausage, whatever it is. People want to be known.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. I've been actually thinking about this a lot more recently because I've been actually looking at it from my CrossFit community, which is kind of an interesting thing. I CrossFit very regularly, and I go out to um, the lots of things that I attend on the weekend or in the evenings is with people from CrossFit, and I've been kind of chewing on that a little bit of like, okay, what is this about? What about this is a part of my identity? What about this is about this community specifically, the CrossFit community is um speaking to me, and I feel like it's the ideology. First of all, the
Mm-hmm.
person that created CrossFit was talking about creating a third space, which is exactly what we need. The other piece is when I go in there, I know that I'm a person that does hard things. So
Mm-hmm.
what the ideology that comes across when that we all have in common at CrossFit is you know, it hurts like hell and we're dying and we're gonna fucking do it anyway, right? Like that's the ideology that I buy into because it's my life, right? Like sometimes it hurts like hell and I'm dying and I'm gonna fucking do it anyway. And I feel like that's the thread of we are the people that just show up and we do it anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what we're needing more of, not necessarily CrossFit, although I do really recommend CrossFit. More of a you're needing a community that speaks to something that you're about, right? That you want your life to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that women having a very unique experience, with the cycles that we go through with our sensitivity to things with how we function. I know Anne was talking about how we're kind of all having this human experience, yes, and men and women are pretty different. So I feel like women gathering is definitely another area that needs a bit more attention.
Yes. And it's not the human of all of us, what you just said, that mantra is life. We're all dying. It's painful. We're going to fucking do it anyway.
Hey, hey. Yeah. No, and it's just showing up every day for yourself, choosing yourself, showing up.
Yeah,
And that looks differently every day, you know?
it does.
And
Yeah.
whatever group you find, right, like CrossFit for UT, where people are present and in some ways vulnerable, right? They're more
Hmm.
open. And sometimes that is through exercise. It can be, it can be called something more therapeutic, like an actual therapeutic group or a spiritual circle like Silvano's, or retreats like Kristy and I attend. We go in for the purpose of healing and connection and presence and consciousness and compassion and acceptance and learning and practicing all these things. You're doing the same thing with CrossFit
Yeah,
in some ways.
exactly.
It
And it's
started, it's
authenticity
under
too.
authenticity. It's being with like-hearted people, right? You
Yeah.
come together under a different label or sort of reason for gathering. And it's similar in some religious groups. Some people really find that in a
Hmm.
religious group. Some people find it in AA. Some people find it in a walking group or, you know, uh, it can be in any realm, but it has to be where people are able to sort of drop into their bodies, right? Get out of their heads.
Hot
So
yoga.
sometimes
Recommend it.
hot yoga, it can happen in school settings, right? Where people are able to get out of their heads, maybe based on content, I would imagine, certainly in practicing or studying psychology and I'm sure chaplaincy and, um, certain topics lend to this better.
I think also it's what are the ingredients needed to feel connected, to feel like you belong? Because really it's about belonging. And
Mhm.
I think one is, can you show up authentically? And I think using CrossFit is a very powerful and like perfect example because if you have to show up to CrossFit authentically. Right. How much can
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
actually lift? Right. And what did you lift before? And what's your goal? Right. How's your body feeling? Like, are you having a healing in your body right now that is prohibitive to you that you need extra support around? How do you physically need to be supported by someone joining you in CrossFit? Like, how do they physically support you in this lift, in this exercise, whatever it is? Right. And then the like-heartedness around how it impacts your life and how it's improved your life, right? Obviously, there's some level of improvement, or people aren't going to keep coming back to CrossFit, right? How it connects you deeper to your body, to what Anne said, like how it's opened up your world, right, in different capacities within yourself, realizing what was inside of yourself, what you could access within yourself, the encouragement from others. You're being mirrors to each other while you're in CrossFit, which is so important that we have in a group setting, that we mirror for one another, your capabilities, the possibilities, the encouragement, all those things. And so I think that like that really deep level of connection requires that the space hold each person's authenticity, and that when they walk through the door that they don't have to keep up an image, because so often, like especially like in our country, so many people feel as though they have to present in a certain way in order to be accepted or in order to be seen as whatever they want to be seen as. And so the beauty of finding a group that just accepts you, period. I mean, that's the fascination with gangs, right? On the street. Like, why would people want to join gangs? Because they belong,
Yeah.
because they're accepted
Yeah.
exactly as they are. They're protected, they're included. So at the very, very essence of our humanity is this very deep connection to belong just for breathing.
It's also
Mhm.
CrossFit is very culty. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
No,
I'm
I'm just
I'm definitely a part of a cult.
no, I think too is to add on to what you were saying, Kristy. It's also challenging, like they challenge
Mm-hmm.
you, or also people leading by example. I see Tere lifting 300 pounds, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try 250 today. Tere can do
Mm-hmm.
300, and you know what I mean. Like I used to CrossFit. I did it for 2 years, and we had our, like our max reps written on the wall. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had my
Yep.
square, and
Yeah.
every time I went up, I wrote it so I could see, oh, she did this. Okay, I got it. I gotta get there. So in the circle too, it's about challenging also one another and being an example, leading by
Yeah.
example.
Being
And
inspired.
right. Just like making women do exercises. Like, hey, in this week, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and I want you to tell
Mm-hmm.
yourself how beautiful you look, how sexy you
Yep.
are, how
Yep.
much you love yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just doing these things and they're like, okay, I did it. It was tough at the beginning. And,
Yeah.
like it was tough for me at the beginning. Now I do it every day. It's natural. And eventually it's to that
Mm-hmm.
point, right? Then you don't need a mirror. You can just like kiss yourself and
Exactly.
wake up, hug it. I'm like, oh, you look amazing. Get up.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Inspiration.
Yeah.
That's what I hear you describing,
Yeah,
Savannah, is that inspirational piece.
absolutely.
Okay, so I just happened upon something kind of interesting this morning as I was getting ready for, this recording. I was listening to this podcast. I wasn't listening to the podcast for this. I was just getting ready and I was listening to a podcast. But it was talking about something that was really surprising to hear, which was that the the people that struggle with anxiety and depression the most are spiritual people that are not religious, that don't have the structure of religion. And that was very surprising, and I haven't listened to the entire episode. I just kind of happened to pause it on that note because we were starting, and I'm now very curious about it, like the person that was, and now I know what podcast it is because literally I was just listening to it. So it was the Know Thyself podcast, and it was the episode, the second to last episode that he put out now. So I'll I'll pull up the name at some point, but it kind of piqued my interest to hear that spiritual people without the container of religion, and maybe it has a lot more to do with community, but also um the other thing that I was thinking of was the actual having like a guidance, maybe, because religion has someone to follow, and if you consider yourself spiritual, the burden of placing a container falls on the self, and that's a really high price. So freedom comes at a really high price, which is like you have to provide your own container. So those are the things that I started to think about as I heard that. I mean, obviously I'm going to go back and listen to the rest of the episode because I'm highly intrigued and I'm curious. But what are your initial kind of reactions to this?
My initial
I would
reaction is
say,
first,
yeah,
I'd want to know the statistics because that really is everything. Where do these statistics come from and what study and where's the population live, where the demographics, things of that nature. I find that really hard to believe just based upon my interactions with strangers. It
Mm,
doesn't align with what I see. I think that, but man, I could talk about that for hours. So my first question is, what's the context of that statement? Like, where did those numbers emerge from? Um, but I would say because people have a lot of spiritual trauma, and I have a lot of people who have anxiety and depression, and and honestly PTSD from their religion, from the teachings, from the weaponization of it, from the abuses that result from it. So, but I can absolutely see how, if someone identifies as spiritual without having a community, the loneliness factor involved in that would be really high. And how are they coping? Like, what are the coping mechanisms that are given to them? I know a lot of religious coping mechanisms are denial and avoidance, in that if you feel anxious or depressed, that you just need to, quote, give it to God. There's a lot of streams within Christianity denominations where that is the advice. That is what you do, is you just avoid it and bury it and don't interact with it because it's, quote, not of God. Um, However, there are really healthy forms of supporting yourself in those spaces. I myself am someone who, for many, many years, lived with treatment resistant depression and anxiety, complex PTSD, and flashbacks. It's the reason I got into the deep therapeutic work that I did to heal that within myself and also in my lineage. There's a lot of was unresolved ancestral trauma. So, um, yeah, I mean, that is so huge. That statement of itself is so huge. But I agree that if someone feels unsupported and they don't have a community, that then when they have their own very intense emotional, spiritual, mental health struggles come up, if they feel unsupported or isolated, don't have practices like meditation or prayer or sitting in a group to do spiritual practices, which is everything. I'm sure, Sylvain, as you know this from your groups, some spiritual practices in a group are just, they have more heft, right? They just do.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm really curious about that podcast myself, and whom they're speaking of, and if people are actually not feeling depressed and anxious, or if they're avoiding it or denying it because they've been told that it's a poor reflection on their spirituality, that their relationship with God isn't right. I don't know. Who knows? But I think that community can absolutely affect someone's mental health, as you said, 1,000% T, that lack of support and place to gather, just feel seen or supported, can be detrimental. So,
all right, I'll send it over to you guys. And
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking it goes back to the conversation we just had right before this about being in a group, right? Like having your pod, your group that you go to, that where you can be yourself and be genuine, feel connected. And so I used to say, I was raised Catholic. I'm a Catholic in recovery. No offense to anyone, but it did not speak to me. It never felt like home to me. It didn't feel like my community. I learned certain lessons and morals through religion. I also, had a lot of trauma and shame and guilt and lots of other questions that came from that. So I am now more spiritual. And within that, it's very hard to find a group, right? I think when you talk about a study like that, my guess is that people who have an organized religion means they have a group, right? They have somewhere to
Mhm.
go each week. They have rituals and traditions and people who support them, right? If they're sick, if they're in need, if they need guidance and mentorship. And those are all the ingredients of being well. And that is harder to find in our culture, I think, without a religion. I've now found that in some ways and continue to build that for myself within the medicine world, within the spirituality realm, in the healing world. But that's, that's been, I mean, the bias, right, is religion sort of pushed that away, right? That it made that all other and bad and underground. And, so I think that is coming back. And yes, everybody is seeking that. And it probably makes sense in a study right now that seemingly people who have religion or believe in a religion maybe struggle less with anxiety and depression because they have a collective, they have a spiritual family of sorts. Yeah, that would be how I view it from what I heard. What about you?
What I think is, I'm just going to go based on my experience, right? In my experiences, I was obviously raised very Catholic. And
Really? You were?
really, really. But I had a great experience with the youth group back in our country. And we did a lot of things. We went to hospitals, we went to visit kids, we went to, the polio hospitals, and we did so much. And I always managed a way to use my art and creativity to bring presents to those kids or to do things. So I had a great experience growing up with that group. However, once we moved to this country, it was different. It was colder. It was like, I couldn't find it. And also, I guess my experience of being Catholic built on but where I am today, right? So whatever was lacking, it started make me question things. Whatever I felt wasn't right energetically because my intuition is super. So whatever inside of me, I felt like, no, like you can say everything, but what you just said, my body would reject it, right? So I would feel that from being little as well. To eventually I got to the point like, this is also a place to learn because you will be given what is the opposite of for you to find what you're looking for. If you're trying to learn unconditional love, you're not going to be given unconditional love, but you're going to be given a place where it's non-existent for you to find it, right? And so with religion, I feel like in my journey, it taught me, okay, this is not where it is. So it's showing me the opposite, the controlling part of it, the shame part of it, the part that you have to look, something out there to pray for things. That just didn't resonate. At one point, I was just like, this doesn't feel right. And so what feels right? So you start searching, right? At one point, you feel like, okay, I mostly disagree with everything. And so you start with like, yeah, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that. This, yes, yes, yes. And then you're like, you know what? I can't do organized religion. And you get to that point in that space, and then you find, okay, what can I do? What do I feel connected to? And so you start questioning yourself and questioning everything around you. Like, yeah, when I'm barefoot, when I hug a tree, I feel it. When I do this, I feel it. So keep doing that. And that could look many different ways. For me, yes, I hug trees. I have kissed trees before. And like I connect with things and I feel people's energy. So just building on what makes you vibrate high, right? What makes you happy? And so to me, when you were talking about love, we are love. and just connecting here, going in your heart is where all the magic happens, right? And so to me, it's about love, it's about respect.
Yeah, you know what you said, Kuya. I'm wondering if also there's depression and anxiety just because those are signals for shedding things, right? Like those are things along the way that like what you were talking about. If I want to feel unconditional love, the the things that will come up will reveal things to shed in the journey towards, right? So that's something else that came up as you were talking. um as we are wrapping up this amazing
We could talk for
conversation
hours.
about spiritual sisterhood, any last closing thoughts? Let's start with Anne first.
Oh, am I on? My last thought, just from what you just said, was what we are calling, right? Naming. I think language is so challenging because it just has such limits to it. But what we call depression or anxiety or any of these things, um, I think what is fascinating is to think about how, again, it's it's something we're noticing within our body and we've now labeled, right? So um, Eckhart Tolle talks about this, right? How this is an experience your mind makes sense of, and we now have this word for. And what if we called it something else, right? What if we just accepted it because expectations are at the root of all suffering, truly, right? So if this is a bad thing, if this is depression, if this is anxiety, if this is something I need to change, it's you're going to be in that loop, right? And when you practice, we call it mindfulness, presence, being in your body, whatever it is for you. The thing that happens is you just start to accept all of it, and I think that's where I am. That's been my practice, is just acceptance, right? Just sort of knowing that all of these things are okay, no bad parts, right? No bad feelings. Um, yeah, hug a tree. Oh, by the way, Kristy is a major tree hugger, Silvana. I don't know if you knew that when you said
Oh,
that, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's great.
Every day. Every day.
Last thoughts, Kristy.
Oh boy, last thoughts. I think when the priority is connection, that really is what gets us in touch with our aliveness. And I think that's why connection with each other, connection with spiritual sisters feels so good, is because it is reminding us of our own aliveness and giving us permission to be in it in a way that is expansive, that is unconditional. Like we were talking about unconditional love. And I heard someone say more than once, but remind me on a retreat that that's what love is. It's unconditional. And so if a love shows up and it's not unconditional, that's not actually love, because love is inherently unconditional, which I agree with. So I think like when we are reminded of our aliveness by the company we keep, by the people we surround ourselves with, then we also are in touch with their aliveness. It's kind of like kindle for the fire. And so we have permission to be. We have permission to show up however we are with whatever labels have been put on it, right? And then the more that we experience that acceptance of ourselves through others, the more we accept ourselves. And of course, the more we accept ourselves, the more we accept others. That's how that works, right? You just have like this beautiful flame of love that grows. And so I think especially with women, when we can get rid of all of the narratives, all of the judgments, all of like, well, this person looks this way, so they must be XYZ, or this person has that title, so they must be whatever, and I'm less than that, or whatever it is. And we just let all that go and we just show up authentically as ourselves to accept whoever else shows up authentically as their self. Then like that is really like the most ultimate nourishment that there is.
Wow, well said.
Oh, thank
And
you. So
hug a
lovely
tree.
to be with you. Yeah. Hug a tree every day. I know. I have so many stories, Helena, that start with, well, I was on the trail and the tree said.
Yeah.
She
Um,
does.
You know
She
what?
does.
You don't have to include it in the podcast, but may I sing this chant for you that came for me from the trees while I was on the trail? Would that be okay? Because like if you're a tree person, you'll totally
please
get this.
do it.
Okay.
Please.
So it was inspired by Mary Oliver's poem, When I Am Among the Trees. I don't know if you know Mary Oliver, but so this is the chant. Ready? When I am among the trees, I say thank you for loving me. I say thank you for healing me. So that came from the trees. So there you go.
That's amazing.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah. Thank you.
Now you know
Thank you.
Christy, and you know why I love her.
Yeah, I can't wait to be with you in real life whenever that happens.
Yeah,
And
seriously.
just to all the women out there, find your pod, find what you were calling it pod, find your tribe, your people. And if you're on your own, you're never alone. You're always held by the universe, by all you have to do is this. That's it. Hold yourself. Hold yourself. Feel that embrace from Mother Earth, from the trees, from just do this. And by closing your eyes and just focusing on your heart, you'll understand you're never, ever alone, because it is impossible to be alone.
Right. We're all here. We're all together. And you heard it here first. Permission to be. Okay. So this is what we have for you this week. This was the Spiritual Sisterhood. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back next week.
With your permission.
And that is all we have for you this week.
Make sure you follow Permission the Podcast.
And we'll be back next week with your permission.